Hey everyone, welcome back. I am Dipayan Ghosh and we are continuing our Darakaraka series. So far we have covered Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter and Moon as Darakaraka. Today we are going into what I consider the most serious and in many ways the most rewarding placement in this entire series, which is Saturn as Darakaraka. Now, I want to say something honestly before we begin is that if Saturn is your Darakaraka, this is not just the placement that promises fireworks and butterflies from the day one, but it is genuinely one of the placements that promises something far more valuable in the long run. Real permanence, real depth, right? And a bond that gets stronger with time rather than fading with it, right? Now let me explain everything about this placement in full detail today, right? So let's get into it. Before we go into Saturn specifically, let me quickly ground you in exactly how this technique works because I want to be precise about the methodology here. That in Jaimini Astrology, we look at the seven classical planets we know. The Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn. Whichever of these holds the lowest degree and minutes of longitude, regardless of which sign it is sitting in, becomes your Darakaraka. And this is what we call a soulmate planet, right? It reveals who the soul is destined to meet, learn from, and evolve alongside. Now, there is a technical point worth mentioning here is that there are two schemes used across different astrological lineages, right? The seven Karaka scheme, which is preferred by Cain Rao lineage, only considers the Sun through Saturn, but the 8 Karaka scheme also includes Rahu, and because Rahu moves in a retrograde direction, its degree gets measured in reverse, meaning 30-degree minus its observed position. And I also want to mention that precision matters a great deal here. The accuracy of anyone's birth time and the specific anamasya, right, which is the calculation method used to align the zodiac, are both critical. A planet sitting close to the boundary of a sign can shift which planet actually qualifies as a Darakaraka. So this is why a properly calculated birth chart from a knowledgeable source of matters so much when working with this technique, right? So one more important clarification is that this particular significator applies specifically to a spouse or a life partner. It is not meant to describe a business associate or a general relationship. It represents a soul level karmic type, right, which is a different layer of information from what the Parashari 7th house lord tells us about the functional structure of the marriage. Now let's talk about what it means when Saturn specifically holds this position. When Saturn becomes Darakaraka, represents what I call a profound karmic contract. It indicates a past life teacher returning into the native's life to help balance old debts between the two souls. This partner is not simply a companion who happens to share a home and a life. They are soul who agreed to return specifically to teach lessons of endurance, responsibility, and character transformation. Although all through the structure and discipline of marriage itself. And this is a heavier karmic weight than most other Darakaraka placement to carry. It shifts the entire relationship away from the pursuit of fleeting romance and towards something much more structural and much more real. Now let me describe what this spouse tends to look like, because Saturn's signature is genuinely distinctive and fairly reliable to spot. In terms of body type and structure, this spouse typically has a lean, angular, and spare build. Saturn gives a defined, somewhat bony structure with long limbs, prominent joints, and overall quality of physical, austerity. There is nothing soft or rounded about this build. It carries a certain lenience that suggests discipline even in the body itself. And the facial features tends to be angular with prominent cheekbones and a well defined jawline. The eyes are usually deep set, serious, and frequently dark in color, maybe a sharp one. There is a composed, contemplative quality to their gaze. The look of someone who sees life through a lens of particularly of practically rather than fantasy. In terms of like complexation, there is a consistent tendency toward dusky or olive tones, and here is a specific and specific and fairly precise indicator worth knowing that Saturn classically produces a complexion that is noticeably darker than the rest of the person's own family. This is like considered one of the more reliable Jaimini markers for identifying this particular planetary signature in a spouse. Now, here is like something happening, something interesting about how this presence is, perceived socially in the beginning. This austere serious appearance can make the couple seem somewhat unapproachable or overly serious to the people around them, but as the year pass and the marriage matures, it perception shifts completely, and the very features that once seemed distant come to be seen as deeply reliable. The angularity and the serious gaze eventually become symbols of strength. This becomes a person that the family and social circle actually trust with important matters, precisely because they look and genuinely are capable of enduring life's pressures without breaking. So Saturn is fundamentally a work-oriented planet, not a romance-oriented one. So in a Saturn Darakaraka union, the natives needs to adopt a mature and strategic perspective from early on, because this relationship is designed for growth through duty rather than through impulsive sentiment. Right now, let me walk you through the core behavioral traits this spouse bring into the marriage. The first is discipline, right? The spouse approaches daily life and household management in a methodical, structured way. Uh, this creates a stable, highly organized domestic foundation that the entire family ends up, benefiting from. The second is emotional restraint, right? Feeling in this relationship tends to get expressed through action and duty rather than through words. This can like initially feel somewhat cold or distant, specific especially to a native who is expecting more overt emotional expression. But over time, this restraint provides a kind of long-term security that few other placement can match. And the third is loyalty. Commitment for the spouse is viewed as a sacred and unbreakable responsibility. This produces a bond that does not fade with time. If anything, it matures and strengthens significantly across the decades. And the fourth is maturity. This spouse tends to act as a stabilizing force in a relationship, often coming across as older or wiser than their actual age. This naturally prevents impulsive decision within the marriage and encourages both partners to genuinely act like adults when conflict arises, rather than reacting emotionally in the heart of the moment. Right now, let me be honest about central difficulty of this placement, because I think it deserves a real attention rather than being glossed over. The core challenge here is what I would describe as the dryness or coldness of this union, particularly in its early years. This relationship often feels emotionally distant at the beginning. There can be painful delays before the marriage actually happens, or periods of separation within the relationship itself. This happens because Saturn demands that both the native and the spouse work, tirelessly to develop genuine warmth between them. It does not arrive easily or automatically the way it might with other placement, but this is always what I would call a work in progress. Love here is not forged through passion in the conventional sense. It is forged through the shared fire of hardship and through the steady fulfillment of mutual responsibilities over time. Right now, let me walk you through every single houses placement in complete detail, because each one activates a specific karmic theme where the native is meant to learn Saturn's particular lessons. See, the first house, the spouse acts as a direct mirror of the native's own identity, often taking on the role of disciplining the native's lifestyle and daily habits. Their entire purpose here is to break down the native's ego and enforce genuine humility, acting as a stabilizing force on the personality. Now, if the native already carries genuine humility, the spouse instead provides the willpower needed to reclaim an authentic sense of identity that may have been buried under other pressures. In a sense, this partner refines the native's character by forcing a shift away from ego centered living and towards disciplined self awareness. Right In the second house, the relationship centers heavily on family wealth, traditional values, and resources that are genuinely earned rather than giving easily. The spouse tends to be, frugal and methodical, managing family finances with a long-term view, focused on security rather than luxury or indulgence. They can teach the native the true value of money and the importance of preserving what has been built across the family lineage. And in practical terms, the spouse stabilizes the families in finances through careful, methodical management and by actively avoiding wasteful or impulsive spending habits, right? In the third house, communication in this relationship is, tends to be careful, purposeful, and often connected to work related environments rather than casual chatter. The spouse is a transparent but genuinely disciplined communicator, someone who cares deeply for the native but has little patience for, frivolous gossip or meaningless conversation. This placement often brings a partner who supports the native's efforts wholeheartedly while also demanding the real intellectual honesty in return. The overall effect is this: that partner grounds the native's daily interaction in something practical and genuinely supportive rather than allowing communication to stay superficial. In the fourth house, domestic life under this placement is structured and disciplined. The home itself tends to be acquired through sustained effort over a long period of time rather than falling into place easily. The spouse brings a strict timetable to the household, helping manage daily chores and providing a sense of permanence through outweighs any feeling fleeting comfort. Emotional warmth in this home develops slowly, but once it's established, it becomes unbreakable. This spouse essentially secures the domestic rhythm of the household, providing a stability that simplifies the native's entire private life. And the fifth house, romantic under this placement develops slowly, and it's often involves significant serious responsibility around children. The spouse tends to act as a strict disciplinarian when it comes to raising kids, prioritizing their proper development and sense of duty over indulgent fun. While this spouse may not be the most outwardly playful or expressive person, they carry a profound sense of responsibility towards the family's creative and procreative legacy. In effect, this partner matures the native's creative impulses into serious long-term investment in children and in what the family will leave behind. In the sixth house, the spouse in this placement is often found working in service, legal, or administrative fields, and they bring genuine functional strength to solving life's obstacles. They fight over natives and actively or work to eliminate external stressors, essentially acting as a protective shield against competition or hardship. This placement demands a fairly regulated life, one where problems get solved through methodical strategy rather than reactive panic. This partner defends the native against outside pressure by handling life's complexity with real patience and endurance, right? Now, in the seventh house, this is Saturn's natural home when it comes to being as a Darakaraka. Since seventh house is literally the house of marriage itself, and this placement indicates what I described as earlier as the past life teacher, and it tends to produce a long lasting marriage build sustainability with compromise, and the spouse takes a full responsibility for the union and will consider the survival and well-being of the marriage before their own temper or ego is most in most situations. I do want to give an honest caution here. Like, if Saturn is afflicted in this placement, it can sometimes, a well supported chart, it can sometimes indicate a native who feels stuck in fairly dry marriage that becomes difficult to live. But in well supported chart, this you know this spouse anchors the entire marriage, ensuring commitment and genuine endurance even if the early romantic spark takes time to develop, right? Now, in the eighth house, the union here involves joint asset that typically builds slowly but steadily through patient endurance and long-term planning rather than quick gains. The spouse is often connected to deep study, research, and complex financial management, and they provide a durable foundation during the major transformations that life inevitably brings. This particular partner has a way of uncovering hidden strength within the native, especially during periods of genuine crisis. In short, this partner brings out resilience the natives did not know they had, while also ensuring that shared resources grow steadily over time. Now, in the ninth house, the spouse in this placement often serve as a genuine spiritual mentor, someone who emphasizes duty and dharma over pure sentiment in a way that echoes the philosophy found in the Bhagavad Gita. They tend to teach that duty itself is the highest form of worship, and they may come from a fairly traditional or conservative background. This relationship carries a strong sense of karmic purpose, elevating the native's overall worldview through genuine ethical discipline. Uh, this partner essentially elevates the native spiritual path by enforcing traditional discipline and consistently prioritizing duty over convenience. All right, now in the 10th house, this marriage tends to be socially visible and closely intertwined with the professional standing and public reputation. The spouse is professionally disciplined and highly conscious of how the couple is perceived publicly, often actively supporting the native's career goals in very tangible ways. In many cases, this couple ends up building a successful business or professional ventures together based on mutual respect and clearly maintained boundaries. In fact, this spouse strength the native's public reputation through discipline, support, and a shared genuine focus on career integrity. Now, in the 11th house, gains in this placement come through the partner, but but they are earned through shared history and social reliability rather than through sudden luck or windfalls. Now, the spouse is generally invested in fulfilling the native's long-term desires and is often highly capable of earning money through sustained consistent effort. They also tend to filter the native social circle, gently steering it towards long-term social connections that provides real material and emotional benefit rather than superficial acquaintances. Uh, this partner turns the native stream into earned, stable realities rather than leaving them as a wishful thinking. 12th house, this connection may involve foreign lands, spiritual institutions, or a certain degree of isolation that requires real sacrifices from the native. In some cases, the spouse may become intensely focused on scientific and spiritual pursuits that they occasionally forget to prioritize the native's immediate emotional needs. Like, even though this bond remains karmically durable, representing a soulmate connection that genuinely transcends purely material concerns. This partner tends to isolate the native from a certain amount of worldly noise, which requires a native to set aside ego in favor of a deeper, more private karmic duty that two of them share. Right, now let's look at how the specific element of the sign Saturn sits in shape, the way this energy actually expresses itself. If Saturn is placed in the fire sign, meaning Aries, Leo, or Sagittarius, the spouse becomes more active and assertive than the typical Sagittarian's profile. Discipline here gets expressed through leadership and through shared courageous rather than quiet restraint. If Saturn is placed in the earth sign, meaning Taurus, Virgo, or Capricorn, the spouse becomes purely duty bound and practical. And the focus here is heavily on material stability and physical structure, which honestly aligns very naturally with Saturn's core nature. If Saturn is placed on the air sign, meaning Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius, the discipline becomes intellectualized. Right, there is a specific and rather lovely exception worth noting here is that Saturn in Libra tends to become unusually pleasant, symmetrically balanced, and genuinely diplomatic, softening Saturn's usual harshness considerably. And if Saturn is placed in a water sign, meaning Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, the spouse expressed what I would call emotional responsibility. Their discipline gets applied scientifically, specifically towards nurturing others and towards spiritual endurance rather than towards more towards the more practical or structural domains we see in earth and air sign. Now now the Navamsha, right, the D9 chart. Now D9 chart is considered the fruit of the marriage. It reveals how the spouse actually behaves once the wedding vows have been exchanged and daily life has fully settled in. To understand the partner's true behavior within the marriage, one needs to locate the exact position of the Darakaraka within the Navamsha chart specifically. There is a rare and genuinely intense configuration worth mentioning here, is that called Atmakaraka-Darakaraka Conjunction. This is when the soul and the Atmakaraka and the spouse Darakaraka sits together in the same position. The This indicates that what is called the twin flame union, all right, where the native spiritual evolution becomes essentially inseparable from that of from that of the spouse. Now there is also something called an axis of polarity. This occurs when the Atmakaraka and the Darakaraka sits in exactly opposite houses from one another. This creates a genuine push and pull dynamic between the self and the other. It requires the native to consciously integrate two very different energies within the relationship. But here is the beautiful part: once that balance is genuinely achieved, the configuration can manifest as what is called as Mahayoga of enlightened love, where the union itself become a bridge toward divine oneness rather than remaining a source of ongoing friction. Now Sagittarian karma is never a punishment, all right. It is a purification process, one designed specifically to burn away immature approaches to love and to build something genuinely unbreakable in their place. Now let me give you the specific remedies for working with this placement. The most important remedy here is behavioral rather than ritualistic. uh, Practice deliberate patience and genuine selfless service within the marriage. Real fulfillment in this kind of union comes from doing what is right for the partner, even in moments when the emotional rewards is not immediate or obvious. Chant the mantra Om Sham Shami Shanicharaya Namaha regularly. This helps to balance Saturn's naturally heavy energy, bringing greater stability into home and reducing unnecessary frictions between partners. Meditate together as a couple on the concept of oneness, or or on divine paired figures such as Shiva and Parvati. And this kind of shared meditation strengthens the bond on a like genuinely higher spiritual plane beyond the day to day practicalities of married life. And perhaps most importantly, makes a conscious perspective shift. Move away from seeking romance in the conventional sense and toward fulfilling duty as an actual foundation of the relationship, by viewing marriage as a sadhana, a spiritual practice built around responsibility. The native aligns much more closely with Saturn's highest and most rewarding vibration. Now, let me close with what I believe the deepest truth about the Saturn Darakaraka is that the ultimate value of this placement is promise of permanence, right? Unlike the more fleeting passion associated with some other placement, a Sagittarian bond gets forged specifically in the fire of time itself, right? Love here may be delayed, it may be testing along the way, it may even feel somewhat dry in the earlier years in relationship, and it matures given the time and genuine effort into one of the most stable form of partnership available anywhere in the entire system. And a bond built on real hard earned respect and sustained loyalty that only grows stronger with each other passing year. The Sagittarian Darakaraka reveals something that is genuinely worth remembering. True love is not simply found, it is earned, right? And it represents a divine contract between two souls who have agreed to help each other grow through the most enduring form of devotion that exists, the fulfillment of shared destiny across time. A soulmate in this particular placement is not someone who arrives to complete you. They are the one who involves in you, right, patiently, steadily, and permanently. Right. Now, if you want to make free Kundli, visit the Cosmic Dharma website. Link in the description down below. And if you want to book a personal consultation with me, you can DM me on Instagram, link in the description down below. And if this video helped you, please like it, share it with someone who has Saturn as Darakaraka, and subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. This brings us to the end of the full of Darakaraka series covering all the 7 planets. If you found this series valuable, let me know in the comments down below which planet turns you to be your own Darakaraka. Until then, honor the discipline in your relationship and trust what is built slowly and often what's last the longest. Jai Shri Ram.